It is called the CHEONGSAM. That one single item of clothing can bring to many of our minds the mystery of the Far East, as well as the beautiful women who wear it. Other names for this Chinese treasure include qipao, or banner gown. Often described as timeless as the country it comes from, the history of this garment dates back hundreds of years. Yet it is still a popular addition to wardrobes all over the world. What makes this fashion so endearing and able to sustain its popularity? Clues from the past can give us the answer. Join me for a history of the CHEONGSAM. Teresa Riley, a professor of art in the design department of the Fashion Institute of Technology, commented on the origins of the CHEONGSAM in an interview in 1995. She was quoted as saying the definitive fashion silhouette of China is not actually Chinese in origin. It is the product of the Manchu, who were invaders into China in the 17th century. According to historical records as chronicled in the textbook China, Its History and Culture, we learn that the Manchu conquered China in 1644, taking control away from the Ming Dynasty. This change in political power from one group to another would be the catalyst to the introduction of the CHEONGSAM. When the early Manchu rulers came to China, they organized their people in banners called qi for their different factions. The women of the Manchu wore the one-piece gown, pao, hence the term banner gown. The Epoch Times website reports that the Manchu preferred their own customary clothing to the Chinese attire. Soon, they had introduced the CHEONGSAM to the population of China. The CHEONGSAM was a long robe, uncomplicated in structure. Unlike the more complex dress of the former dynasty, the gown had been developed as a more practical piece of clothing suited to the nomadic lifestyle of the Manchu culture. It featured slits from the hem up the thigh, which historians today believe were established to accommodate horseback riders. The CHEONGSAM was a unisex item. Versions of the gown for men and women were decorated with fancy and colorful embroidery. A recent article, printed in the Xinhua news agency, states that the CHEONGSAM's design was premeditated to make it loose on the female wearer in an effort to hide the womanly figure. As expected, the garb of upper-class women were usually far more elaborate and lavish in detail. Depending on her station in life, the CHEONGSAM could be made of the richest silks and other expensive fabrics. Decorations of all types were used, even pearls and precious gems. Much like today, females of lesser means emulated the styles but used cheaper materials, such as cotton. The wearing of the CHEONGSAM was seen in almost all occupations and lifestyles, but certain colors and symbols were regulated by law. In the Qing dynasty, the dress code was explicit in what was allowed. The color yellow was seen as the most royal of all colors. Anyone who wore yellow besides the emperor, the queen, or the prince would be sentenced to death. This CHEONGSAM is made with purple yarn and embroidered with hibiscus patterns. Because it is lighter in weight, it was most likely a summer garment. The embroidery is rich and comprises 3 layers total. It is from the late Qing dynasty. Winter CHEONGSAM were often lined with fur or padded with silk or cotton to keep the wearer warm. The gown, once a simple piece of clothing designed by the need for practicality, had become a symbol of power and wealth. The next step in its evolution would come from not within China, but from the far shores of Western society. Hazel Clark teaches at the School of Art and Design History and Theory at Parsons, the New School of Design in New York City. Her book, The CHEONGSAM, details this classic piece from the Qing dynasty to the present. She says her interest in the CHEONGSAM came about when she was teaching in Hong Kong and wanted to study a classical piece of Chinese fashion.
I really wanted to do some work on something which was local to Hong Kong. I'd moved from the UK and I'd been used to working on subjects around fashion and textiles in the UK, so that was the basic reason, and that it to me seemed the most sort of obvious garment because it was significant in many ways to Hong Kong, as opposed to other places than I'd even first thought. Women's dress that was most closely associated with Hong Kong, and the more I looked into it, of course, I realized significant in many ways.
During her studies, she learned that by the beginning of the 20th century, Western influence was evidenced by the introduction of a slimmer silhouette. The traditional trousers or heavily pleated and embroidered skirt worn under the long robe were also affected. Both became lighter, the skirt shorter during that time. After the inception of the Republic of China between the years of 1912 through 1949, and due to the political climate, many changes regarding dress and fashion were seen. The customs of using clothing as a mark of social class were abolished. Foot bindings were outlawed, even though it took until the middle of the century to actually disappear. And dressing for women meant they could now show their ankles under shorter hemlines. One scholar has suggested that unbound feet made the old ornamental robes look out of place and outdated. The CHEONGSAM was also changing and began a new evolution into a more modern garment in the 1920s. Shanghai was a very important port during this decade. Cosmopolitan in nature and aided by its growing film industries, Shanghai and Hong Kong gave birth to the modern CHEONGSAM. From the movie screen, the fashion moved into the closets of rich women and silent movie actresses. Soon this new style, with its more narrow shape and hemlines ending at the knee, became associated with China itself. Between the two world wars, the CHEONGSAM became an immediately recognized symbol of the Chinese woman. In this 1934 film clip from the melodrama The Bible for Girls, we see the CHEONGSAM worn by young women in Shanghai as they live their party girl lifestyle. Another form of media was also making the dress popular, the advertising poster. From cigarettes and beer to cosmetics and cleansing products, the CHEONGSAM was featured as the costume of choice for all Chinese women. The posters often came in the form of calendars. Companies would distribute them worldwide to celebrate the Chinese New Year. The popularity of the CHEONGSAM reached a new high in the 1950s. From sewing patterns to ready-to-wear right off the rack, women the world over adopted it to fit into their lifestyles. In the United States, the popular movie The World of Susie Wong showed off Nancy Kwan's body in a tight-fitting costume with slits up the thigh. Strange that this perennial costume was falling out of favor in the home of its origin, as the Communist Party took over the government. Under the new attitude of the spirit of equality, women began to dress in the plain jacket and slacks nicknamed the Mayo suit. Finally, by the latter part of the 1960s, the arrival of the miniskirt heralded the decline of the CHEONGSAM. Increasingly popular, the CHEONGSAM is sometimes used as a fashion statement of elegance. Chris Childs, a fashion consultant to several private labels in the United States, chose to have her own maid of honor wear a CHEONGSAM at her wedding.
The reason that I chose the CHEONGSAM for my bridesmaid dresses was this is a very traditional look. Everyone looks good in a CHEONGSAM. It's not something that you can really go wrong with. Every body type, every age, every height, it's universal. Another reason I chose this dress is when you look back at the wedding pictures, your children will see this, your grandchildren. Hopefully it'll be around for a long time. Since the CHEONGSAM is not a fad, it's something that's always been around, it's very classic, it's timeless. The brocade that this gown was made of went very well with the colors for the wedding. It had shine and sparkle, but it was still elegant for the occasion. I couldn't have made a better choice.
Looking into the future, I think we can only speculate. If the future of the CHEONGSAM can be predicted by popular film and movies, taking a look at the Sci-Fi Channel may give us a hint. The original Star Trek series often dressed up characters, both men and women, in the comfortable yet elegant style. Whatever shape it takes or wherever it is worn, the wearer of the CHEONGSAM can be assured they are following in the footsteps of some of the most fashionable women and men in the world.